And we did this by vacating positions through attrition. From 2009 to now, we went from 424 employees down to 400 employees. That's a 7% decrease in your workforce. That's 1.5 million decrease in the payroll. That's 5% of payroll decrease. We have not hired any new hires. Everything's been done through attrition. The success of the budget, maintaining vital services in town, and we have been able to do that this year. Everybody has complimented the Parks and Forestry. Everybody's complimented DPW for the great work they've done on the roads. They really worked hard. We kept these roads clean, we kept them safe. But I can tell you right now, if we didn't do some of the things we did this year, that wouldn't be happening next year, because we would have been laying people off. We would laying people off that we needed. It wasn't that we didn't need the workforce. We need the workforce, and I can tell you that. Firsthand, I sit on that desk, I see it every day. And we came under the cap by $2.2 million. What this means, ladies and gentlemen, that we legally could have increased that budget $2.2 million more, but we chose not to. You want to know why? At my budget meeting, an individual came up to me and said, why don't you just max it out, Mayor? That would have been a 9% increase in your taxes. That's why we didn't cap it out. But there are challenges that lie ahead of us, and the cost drivers. Healthcare costs. The healthcare costs, they've increased $1.6 million in 2011. That's a 22% increase from the year before. Yes, although this item is a waiver from the cap, it still affects your tax levy. It still affects the amount of taxes that need to be raised. So what we had to do is, I met with the business administrator, Jasmine and I, and a few of the staff members. We got a wellness coach. A wellness coach to come into town hall and help us somehow reduce our premiums. Now that costs $70,000. But you know what? I'm willing to take the risk. I'll tell you why. Because if that $70,000 can save you $500,000 next year, then we did our job. And we need to try. We need to make, because this is going to continue to increase, and I'll tell you why. I came as a controller of a company before I became mayor, financial company. And one of the cost drivers in healthcare is your claims, your loss ratio. Well, in order for a company or carrier to make dollars, we need to be around 80%. Well, Parsippany Troy Hills was at 110%, which means the carrier was not making money on the township of Parsippany, which means when we went out to RFQ, nobody would quote us. We were too much of a risk. And now we're self-insured and we're taking the risks. But I believe with these types of drivers and us working together at the township level, we're going to make it work out for next year. I really do. Retirements. We have a lot of retirements coming up, and I'm pretty sure, and Chief Perkman's here today, that we're going to be taking a hit in the police department. I wrote something up the other night. The chief sent me this about maybe a month ago, and I updated it. And I got to tell you something. This is pretty scary what I'm about to read to you. Our ordinance allows us to be at 113 police officers. Currently, as of 3/23 tonight, we're at 95. 98 officers is the lowest level without feasibility of hiring in over 27 years. In addition, we expect another police officer to retire April 1st. And we expect, at best case scenario, another 8 officers to retire. That's going to bring us down to 87 police officers. With a town the size of Parsippany Troy Hills, it's going to be very hard to patrol. We're going to have to, get rid of some of the non-essential services. How many people here went to the Citizens Police Academy? How great was that? Terrific. Terrific. Well, that would be one of the items that would have to be deleted. Why? Because what's happening here is we need to patrol, we need to keep the town safe. And one of the scary things is that if we don't start hiring, we're always going to be behind the 8 ball. And after this meeting's over, if you'd like to speak to the chief on it, he can really fill you up in detail on that. sorry about that. I got into the police thing. Gasoline, that's another cost driver. It just keeps going up and up, and you know what? We have to account for it. Why? Because we have to run our vehicles, our police vehicles, all those things. So, but here's one problem for me personally, and I'm going to probably get a little melodramatic tonight. I get yelled at by certain individuals because I get into this. One of the things that's always irked me since I've been mayor is the state diverting municipal revenues to their budget. That's a reduction in state aid. I don't call it aid, because Parsippany never applies for aid. It's funding. It's the amount of tax dollars, income tax dollars that you send down to Trenton that you don't get back. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to explain to you about the Consolidated Municipal Property Tax Relief Aid. We used to get, well, these types of aids, any gross receipts, which is utility companies, franchise fees, they all used to be paid directly to the townships, to municipalities, to do one thing, and that was to offset property taxes. Over time, the state has taken money from these revenue sources to fund its own operations, as opposed to giving the revenues to local towns, as I said before, as it was intended to do so. Legislators wrote into law that they would fund the energy. The fact of the matter is this, that the state is diverting our town's revenues to balance its budget, leaving the residents with a tax increase or a decrease in municipal services. The bottom line is these revenues belong to municipalities, they belong to you. They don't belong to the state. The effect is higher taxes for seniors and families. I want to read something to you here. Actually, this is before I came here. I worked on it with the controller just a few days ago. From 1994 to 2005, the average state aid that the Township of Parsippany received as part of its budget was 13.62% on the average. From 2006 to 2009, the average state aid percentage of the budget to the aid was 10.55%. The last 2 years, the average is 7.5%. Last year, we lost $1.2 billion in state funding. That increased the tax levy by 41%. And why do local governments need funding from the state? Simple. Because the state established a tax policy for all levels of government in New Jersey. And because the state made itself the collection agent for many taxes that used to be locally assessed and collected. What this means is that over the last century, many taxes that had been collected by local governments to offset property taxes were either abolished or became state taxes. In most cases, when these changes were made, the state promised to reimburse municipalities either the amount that they've been collecting or the amount they would collect. But that commitment has not always been honored. Ladies and gentlemen, basically, your taxes are in the hands of the state. Not just the state, it's in the hands of us as well. But we need that help. Let's talk about school taxes. Even if we control the municipal taxes in Parsippany, which is approximately about 21 to 23% of the budget, school taxes account for 67% of your tax bill. That's a significant amount of money. I'll tell you this, I'm proud to be a product of the public school system here in Parsippany. I know many people here that went to school with me. I know some people that went to the other high school. This is the one I'm in. But we had a great education. But what is the solution? There needs to be school funding reform.